Hello and welcome to this special episode. In this episode, I'm kind of gonna compile, or I guess one could say summarize what in season 1 we've kind of been talking about, and kind of wrap that up to lead into the coming talk, which is the Egypt talk, I could really call it, regarding the Bronze Age. Well, there's a lot of stuff that kind of comes into that, that comes together within that talk, but more about that later. So in the beginning, we kind of kick this season off with, well, narcissists and grifters, and these like cult gurus. And I really do think like a lot of these things kind of tie in, I guess, into a lot of, I guess, societal problems that we have. Because I mean, there's these different people, like Verkaki, for instance, to name someone who talks about the meaning crisis, and then there's others who kind of talk about like the meaning crisis, the reality crisis, and the belonging crises. And well, for a long time I've been like looking into this and really trying to figure out like, well, what's kind of going on with that, like what's actually the issue here. And now in this season we together kind of like the round table together, you could really say, has been bringing up things, and we've been trying to like get a better understanding of this. And throughout this period, really the recorded talks, but also like the talks we just had more casually, it really like brought a lot of stuff together, kind of like why these problems are going on, and like what's actually like underneath all of this stuff. Underneath all of this, like, I guess, division stuff going on, like left and right, but also like this woke stuff and cultural stuff too. And with cultural stuff, I would really say like, I guess the kind of art that's being made, and kind of where the culture is going towards, with a lot of, I guess, like the unconscious drift of the culture towards like AI and all these different things. And I will be talking a bit more about some like cultural myths too that we have, but we'll be thinking like a bit later on that one, because I would like to like dive first into kind of what I see, what is going on with and what we have kind of discovered, what is going on with regarding to these grifters, these cult gurus, and these like narcissists, and kind of this atmosphere that's been created. Like, what's the underlying thing culturally? So first, I would like to say something about the narcissists and the grifters. And you see here this picture of Mordor and Sauron here standing. Well, it is something that's important. Something that is important to note here, which kind of also came up with the Shadow Magician talk, was that Sauron with his eye kind of is like he's always gazing outward. There's no there's no reflection there, and it's kind of the thing with like narcissists and and there's something underlying there, a complex, but which is like a psychological complex, which basically is like, well, you could put it as ideas and in that sense, well, I guess memories and other like and thoughts and like thought patterns that are wrapped up by and held together by well, emotion and kind of like a life force energy, the life force energy of one's being. And one of these complexes is the inferiority superiority complex. Others technically sometimes divided into inferiority complex and superiority complex, but they kind of come in a package deal often. And narcissists kind of have like this well, they have this complex or both in a sense, but I do want to say people with an inferiority or superiority complex don't have to be narcissistic, because narcissistic is kind of more like a way they go about it, trying to solve it, which is a very fucked up manner how they do that. But it still underlies this. Well, yeah, this complex still lies under this. And other ways out of this, this one, which is social integration. I will talk more about that later, but regarding to that, like coming back more to like the more present day modern problems, it is this, I guess, a lack of community and this lack of, well, togetherness that kind of creates that, because we have become quite isolated from each other, and in that sense, through the isolation and the fact also that we I guess we don't really know like well anymore, like how to relate to each other and to do these things, because it's like, you know, like using one's phone and using one's and all this technology stuff is different than having like a face-to-face conversation and actually living with people in like a physical manner that's like here in this real world. So that's kind of one thing that kind of then creates this kind of atmosphere for that, in which kind of like ends up creating like, you would call, I don't know, I wouldn't say narcissist, because there's like the actual disease, but I guess people with narcissistic traits, I would say that yeah. But you know, then there's these like cult gurus and there's like these grifters and stuff, and I really do think like in general some of them at least have managed to free themselves of something that comes before this, which is the parental complex. And what you're seeing here is a depiction of the mother complex, or like how like a mother complex is depicted as this like devouring demon. And well, the mother complex and in that sense is more like well, she's a bit more like trying to like like, I don't know, she's like over nurturing, over protecting. She's very like holding her child close, but in a sense that it doesn't allow the child, so the individual, to grow up and to become their own individual. And that becomes then the devouring aspect of it. It becomes too... One, in the other sense, I mean, there's also, like, I guess, an aspect of, like, completely not looking after one's child in some sense too, because I mean, there's the nurture aspect too that is for a child important for obvious reasons, but that's for sure one big part of it. And yeah, then we also have the father complex, and it's a bit different. It's more like depicts Kronos here from a movie. Kronos in this sense is more, you could call it authoritarian. In he wants to preserve a particular worldview, a particular way of how things are. It's like, I guess he's very conservative, you could call it, but it doesn't allow for new youthful energy to update the old system, and it becomes then tyrannical. And I guess, like, in some sense, when like the woke people talk about like patriarchy and all kinds of stuff like that, I really do think like they're referring to this monstrosity, and they're talking about this in I guess a psychological sense, that I guess they're seeing that, but it is something that really then needs to be overcome. This, but also, you know, the mother complex, but also the inferiority superiority complex. It is something that needs to be overcome, and for that, well, it delves more into the hero's journey. It's like what you can see here also with the man riding Pegasus with the trident. You know, the trident shooting lightning, truth onto Kronos, and like in this depiction, anyways. What that represents. And this is a quick side note. Pegasus, the flying horse, is the wind horse, so it's like an aspect of the soul, or like it represents the soul in that sense. Then I just wanted to say, before diving into the collective unconscious a bit, just wanted to point out, like, one of the things that it's gonna still come up is about Medusa and kind of this, like, devouring feminine aspects. And I just wanted to bring up about Poseidon and Medusa, that they apparently, from what I've learned in these talks, that she is Medusa and Poseidon basically were a couple, and Poseidon represents like a god of the unconscious, much like Hades does in some other aspect, and I guess Dionysus too. But there are different beings connected to the unconscious in various ways. The sea being the symbol of the collective unconscious, and that then comes right in here with this image and of the cenotes in South America. And you know, these archetypes, because these complexes, or like in a personal level, they're complexes, but in a more like collective sense, they are, well, very archetypal. And like, I mean, yes, the archetypes are in some sense also connected to the instincts, but the form and the shape they take is very much collective. And that is, there's something very important in that, and that is that like these different forces that are being described, like this devouring feminine of this devouring spider feminine of the internet, or the patriarchy, and these things are, and even like the narcissist grifters that are everywhere. It's connected to the complexes, but at the same time, because there's like a link to the collective unconscious as well, because it, well, I mean, I guess you could really say like it's a collective issue. It is something that then gets represented in in our media and within our culture, and it gets its own myths, you could really say, and there's like different myths connected to all of this stuff. And in a way, you could really call them modern myths. You know, and these different archetypes, because there's many. There's way more than just these parental complexes, like this negative stuff. Because there's way more archetypes out there. The thing is just like, you know, like these cenotes, they're like underground currents that are flowing, and they're like underground rivers. And depending on, like, I guess where the psychic energy goes, that the water flows, those archetypes get propped up. That's what Jung also had said himself. That is exactly how that happens. It's where the energy goes collectively. And if we as a collective are dealing with these complexes on quite a big scale, then there's a lot of energy going into that. So how more people overcome these complexes, well, the better it is for the collective, and how better, in that sense, society would look like, because there's more people that can pull that energy away from that, so that it doesn't prop up in all kinds of unconscious manners. You know, here in this next image, then you see this overview, and I've used this in the collective unconscious talks, both parts. You have here like left brain only, and that's kind of like the crux of the issue. It's like thinking that one is only the ego. You have there the tower, like, you know, Sauron's tower, or what I was talking about. You have the NPC. It's like I'm only the left brain. And then the zombie, which is like a cultural symbol that's very it's occurring a lot, and it's, as Jung to Live By pointed out, it connects to the unlived life, and it's an allusion to not being in connection to, well, one's inner life force, and that really just boils down to like eros and the instincts. Then you also see like logos, you know, with the animus, anima, and thanatos, and then eros, and they're divided in like anima, animus, and there's an aspect with the anima, like the nurturing side, but there's also devouring side, but also then more like logos linked side, something more connected to logos, something that is more, I guess you could say, more in the upper regions of the brain, where, well, the the nurturing anima side more at the bottom here with the eros, and also with the masculine, it's more connected to the instincts. It's more instinctual. You also see Poseidon here again, and the wolf warrior. We'll get into that more, and also like Dionysus. But what is really important to also kind of understand is that what it's kind of doing, this left brain only world, is kind of repressing instinct, because we've become disconnected from it, because we're only the left brain. There's no, when eros is cut off, and then through that, logos also degrades, it becomes lesser. It doesn't become as it needs the other half. It's what brings it to life. It's like the balance that brings it to life, and this repressed eros has a messenger. You can see here Pepe the Frog, but also Pepe here connected to Egypt through Kek. But what is most important is kind of like, that they're kind of like a cultural messenger, the trickster, which is a messenger of the unconscious, and that's kind of like trying to point something out. And at the same time, you have like, this through this repressed instinct, there is this mana, so how it is called, which is really the psychic energy that flows then into the devouring feminine and the great devourer, so the devouring masculine. You can here see the octopus, Kronos again, Cthulhu, but also here like Medusa and the robot mother, and like the digital anima in this other form here. And these are connected to like the parental complexes then in like a personal level, and then in like a collective level, it's really more like archetypal, like how it presents itself. But it's these things that need to be overcome through the hero's journey, so we can rescue that eros life force to bring a life back to the world. And I really wouldn't know like what if it's the devouring feminine and like the devouring masculine, so the great devourer, how it's written here, that kind of caused the left brain only world, or the left brain only world caused that. Maybe the left brain only world kind of like seeped in over time. It's kind of as Descartes and these philosophers that kind of got us in this whole mess to begin with. But this tower can't stand this tower of Sauron, and like lightning will hit it, like lightning, the truth kind of will hit it, and it will crumble down because it doesn't work. And there's these different depictions, and also in the culture about these eruptions of, I guess, Thanatos, you could call it. And you have here this octopus with like standard oil on it, and there's like different things get depicted as the octopus, but really deep down, the octopus is this. Is a depiction of this devouring force, this devouring masculine or feminine force. And it then gets connected to things. You can also see here, for instance, like a depiction of it in Bloodborne as well. It's more like a modern depiction of such like a octopus-like form. The octopus is kind of like an allusion to also the snake with like the tentacles, and there's something that kind of was brought up, that kind of the octopus is kind of like is like a multi-snake entity with like one single head that kind of controls it. And I really have been thinking about that one, and I really think that maybe in some sense it's kind of like because we haven't been overcoming these complexes, and we haven't been overcoming, I guess, the snake or like the dragon, how you would call it symbolically, that maybe over time one snake became many because it just multiplied, because we haven't been I guess we haven't done this in a long time. Because I mean, a lot of like, well, mythology and a lot of like, I guess, religious efforts, you could really call it, or spiritual efforts, I think would be even better, towards like overcoming these things have been kind of lost, or like haven't been like seen as anything, because there's like this whole like left brain only world tendency, and it's not seeing these things. It's like, nah, this is just stupid. There's no massive snakes and like these things going on. It's just stupid. So it's kind of like I guess a repression of this. But what's important to understand is that these things are like projections of psychic content, so things that are within the collective but also individuals, and that gets projected outward onto the world. And maybe in some sense you can be like, well, it's not actually out there in the world in like a physical sense. And yeah, probably in that particular sense, like how it's depicted, no. But it's there as a psychic force, and it affects people and people's lives. So in that sense, it is real. And also the spider is one form of this too. A singular head and this multi-vector attack capability that it has. And this repressed instinct kind of then leads towards, what I had also in the image, Thanatos. And Thanatos is really, I guess, the destructive tendency within humans, where Eros is more the life force energy, more the creative tendency. And there's this like division between, like, because Eros is connected to love, and Thanatos is more like something, I don't know, you could call it more like nihilistic, or like more like Thanatos wants to go back to the immaterial, how I had said in one short. It wants to go back to nothing, where Eros is about creating and going from that. But it's at the same time, it's like Logos is up and Eros is down as a life force. So in that sense, like Logos is really going up towards the heavens, where Eros is going down from the heavens into this world, into the body, where Thanatos is very much like, how about we just annihilate all of that? We just get rid of all of that. It's kind of like it would have been better if nothing would have been there at all, kind of stuff. And it's one tendency, or like one thing that comes up when this life force, this Eros life force, gets repressed, and that's again connected to these complexes, and through and really to connected to these archetypal forces that are all wreaking havoc in the collective. But there is something also though about this devouring feminine and masculine force, though, that seems to be depicted within the culture in a manner that isn't completely true to what it really is. And well, most people would not know much about Kal Bhairava, how he's also called, or just Bhairava. It's like very Dionysian figure, kind of. And most people probably would know Kali more. But both Kali and Kal Bhairava kind of are, in that sense, they're not devouring. It's more of like a wrathful form of the self, like a manifestation of the self in its wrathful form. And it's only wrathful because it's like, just can see it like this, that it's the repressed eros energy, so the life force energy bubbling up in this form to try to get the person out of their head, to basically go from the head back down to the body, and to kind of like bring those two together in the heart. And that's what that symbolizes. And it's not there to well, I guess you could call say kill one or something in a literal sense. It's more symbolic. It's a symbolic death. It's like a death of like false consciousness, and that's what that represents, and that's what she destroyed, also Kali. But also Kalbarava is connected to that too. And one good hint about like that they're connected to instinct is, for instance, with Kalbarava, is that his companion is a dog. And that's kind of like a straight giveaway with regarding to that, like dogs, but also wolves. And this then also kind of leads into the repressed instinct, because it is very much like Mysterious Stranger in the Collective Unconscious talk pointed out, that like you can be like, no, this is bad, this is like like how Joe Rogan would put it, like this like bad chimp behavior, and like, oh, that's all destructive. But the thing is that there is more to instinct than just, I guess, the bad stuff. There's good and bad to it, and it's all about like kind of what we do with it, and like how well we integrate it. Because if we don't integrate it, then it falls into the unconscious, and then it starts to dictate us, because it becomes its own free agent in a way, and it starts to for us as ego consciousness, it then becomes like, well, there's these instincts and they're just coming over me, and I'm just being like taken over, like it's like one gets possessed. But the thing is that really is by bringing it up into consciousness and actually working together with it, with this eros, like life force energy, that you can actually, well, I guess it becomes more, I guess, less, I don't know, like destructive, you could call it, because you work with it in a way. Like there's like a collaboration between ego consciousness and like the logos side, but also with the eros side, with the life force instinct side. So there's this collaboration going on where there's more of like I guess balance there, so that you can actually work well together with it, and then it doesn't have to be so destructive or come out in these destructive bursts or other, like, I guess, like hedonistic bursts of instinct, because it doesn't have to be that way. And if you actually integrate it, then it really then goes into the hero's journey, and kind of like, I guess you could call it like shadow integration. You could call it like that too, because but it's more like that. There's this aspect of like both the anima with the inferiority superiority complex, but also with the parental complexes, the instinct that are kind of then, and and then with that kind of eros that's then being repressed. And if we, through the hero's journey, integrate these two parts, then together with logos, then we create this balance. And it's right, this also that kind of gets depicted in one of the modern myths. And one societal myth, kind of what going on is like you have the reptilians, you have the Pleiadians, and then you have the Greys. Well, there's this conspiracy theory about like there's like the reptilians, the elites are the reptilians, and they're ruling us. I don't think it actually is that. You shouldn't take it literal, or even think that it's actually something that might even. There's like probably like some weird shit mixed up with that, but I think when you really like put it down to it, I think the reptilian part is the reptilian brain, fight or flight. So it's more of a admission of that fight or flight is ruling us. Then you also have these Greys, and Joe Rogan is kind of talking about it in some interesting manner, because if you really listen to him with the 2 talks he had with Duncan Trussell, if you really listen to him and take this into consideration, he kind of is talking about wanting to go towards the neocortex, the metaphorical part of the brain that has this ability to think in metaphor, and that's the Greys, because they have big brains and they have no testicles and shriveled up kind of bodies, and it's kind of like, and they don't really look human anymore either, because the Pleiadians do, and it's more of like you could call that like a big brain kind of being that sacrifices the body and instincts and doesn't like have that anymore, and that's somehow then seen as good, because like instead of the reptilians you could like place the chimps there, and that's kind of like how that's seen. It's like, oh god, these things are like ruling over us, but it's because it's not integrated why it is. And the Pleiadians are more like, like the social, emotional, and they're seen as like helpers. And kind of also makes sense, because it's kind of that what brings these two together and can like mediate between kind of both of them. And I think it's, yeah, I kind of think that this like a whole like myths around these aliens are really about, I guess, these different parts of us that have become very, for ego consciousness, very alien to us, because we've become so far removed from that, from this mythological thinking, in this, and in that sense, could really say that these alien stories, because I do think there's aliens out there, but at the same time I do think also that a lot of stuff that's being said about aliens is more this kind of like modern mythology stuff than really, well, actually real stuff about aliens. And it says more about us than actually the aliens, because we seem to be projecting a whole lot of stuff onto that, and then Carl Jung also talked about like the UFO being like a circular thing, so a symbol of wholeness. So there's a lot that we can like project onto that, and I do think that we do that. But it's not just in there. There's also within just like, I guess, normal culture, you could call it, or more, I guess, mainstream culture, also stuff that's kind of in that too, like that kind of highlights the same story. Take here with Star Wars, the Jedi and the Sith. The big real problem with the Jedi is that they're trying to cut themselves off from emotion, and they were not allowed to feel that. And then they're kind of rejecting a part of themselves, and to become like kind of like, I guess, Vulcans in a way. It's another kind of something connected to that. But what kind of happens with the Jedi is then, because of that rejection, they kind of then end up falling to the dark side. But they then give in to the emotions, but it's not integrated, and then they fall to the dark side. And then, well, what happens? They get subsumed by it because it's not really integrated, and then they get taken over by it, and then they're just ruled by the emotions and kind of like, their passion, you could call it. But it's because it's not integrated that it takes this dark and fucked up form. Because then the emotions, the instincts kind of like come over you. And there is kind of like this, I guess, this middle way that is needed. And it's kind of like what Luke did in the extended universe, and like, well, it's kind of now Legends, but with his new kind of like Jedi Academy, what he had there, he tried to integrate that the emotions, the instincts, to actually be able to love, because that was something that was not allowed. You were not allowed to form attachment to love and to have these connections. Because there's nothing wrong with love. How Jolly Bindo in Kothar would have put it. Like love won't condemn you; it will save you. And it's the connection with humans that is needed. Otherwise, one becomes Sauron in the tower, or Saruman in the tower, where you can be Gandalf. And Gandalf is the good character he is because, well, he travels around, he communicates, he talks to people, he travels and has these adventures, but he talks a lot to people too. He interacts a lot, and he's not in a tower locked up somewhere in pondering his orb. Also with like Elden Ring and like the From Software games too, kind of what I've learned from Max is, well, it's kind of depicted in that too, because in a lot of these stories there is, how Max also pointed out, like a choice to be made to usher in the age of darkness, the age of humanity, or to restore the age of the gods. And if you really know what the gods are, how like Jung also talked about it. So the gods are the archetypes, and the archetypes are connected to what? Instincts. And in that sense, in like Elden Ring, it makes sense that the gods are outside of the world, outside of this like that realm, and are these like influences on it. But it's again this like integration of these instincts of the, you could call it the gods, or like like that there's this dialogue going on between consciousness and unconsciousness and the instincts, that then allows for the integration of it, and allows for, you could call it a new order. And it's kind of like what in the From Software games it's trying to allude to. It's like trying to create that to I guess hint at some sort of solution for it, without losing, I guess, like the that's what we have created so far. And the thing is, I do think that it is possible to to have Logos and Eros and through the anima work together. And the anima is kind of in some sense in the latest like From Software game Elden Ring too, represented through kind of the maiden figure that you have. But the Elden Ring, but also the Earth Tree kind of being symbols of the self. But a lot of this really then also boils down to the hero's journey. And that's to really undertake that. And it's to face what is in the shadow and actually integrate these things, to reintegrate these parts, to actually make one whole, to have, to gain the insight and stay clear of the frenzy. To in that sense, to really integrate these parts, these different aspects, and these different, I forgot the name of how it is called in Elden Ring right now, but these different things that you kind of gain from defeating these bosses. It's in a way that's kind of what you're doing. You're kind of absorbing that into yourself, and take these aspects on, and through that you're kind of working towards completeness, because the ring is a symbol of the self as well, and that's kind of working towards with these different symbols, also working towards this becoming whole again. And that's kind of the point of the whole journey. It's the point of kind of individuation in that sense. But there's different aspects to that too. It's because the hero's journey is very, I guess you could say, handy in overcoming the parental complex, because that's something here also in Egypt, already a bit of a thing too. It's you can see here in this image also there's Thoth and Horus and Maat, and these different figures there, and also Anubis, and they're fighting the snake, and it's kind of overcoming the snake, the parental complexes, the the mother complex, of how I could call it, but kind of both. It's kind of overcoming it's like Seth, but then also it's at the same time it's a snake of chaos. It's kind of bringing back that youthful life force, and it kind of, it's important to bring that back, because otherwise that what is there, the culture becomes dead and stale, and it starts to kind of decompose as an undead body, and it's kind of a zombie then at that point. It becomes a zombie then, but it's because there's a lack of the hero's journey. But with this, there's it kind of comes into the whole I guess Age of Gemini related Quarios talk too, and kind of the Age of Gemini, but also Age of Cancer, because you have the Mother of the Mountain as a symbol too. She's the snake of chaos, Tiamat, but at the same time she's she's Mother Earth. She's the nurturing mother, and with that, with this feminine aspect, which is a good aspect as well. Then also comes the snake. You also had these snake cults, and these mother and snake cults kind of form the you could really say the basis of it. It's we were climbing out of unconsciousness. Consciousness was climbing out of that, and from that kind of through the hunting rituals then. Because these hunting rituals really required future thinking, to be able to think in and see the future. Then came the wild hunt, kind of the Quarios came out of that, and that's kind of the Age of Gemini kind of stuff. That's the divine twins that also for instance Jung wrote about, and kind of this story of I guess individuation, the hero's journey, becoming your own, for man, your own man. And it's to break free from society, because it's kind of like you had society which was seen as feminine, as this feminine enclosure, and you would go out into the world and you would unleash this like and find this masculine eros side, both this logos and eros side, and you would bring that out of one. You would go on this journey. These, and first it was like hunting, these hunting trips, but later on there were also these like raids involved in it, and it became more like connected to military over time. But the essence there really is just to really break free from the parental complex and to really like reconnect to instinct. Women had something connected to that too, like with Artemis and these these bear rituals connected to that. But kind of the essence from that stems out of these earlier like mother goddess cults, and the linked hunting rituals that they had, and that became the choreos, and that became like this ritual to kind of for the person to break free. It's like breaking free of the consciousness from unconsciousness, where there's also a necessary part to come back and to kind of like reintegrate, to find that balance again. And that's a ritual that we used to have as well, a species, one could call it, but we kind of like lost touch with, or with both, kind of like the hero's journey and this like coming back journey, and this rebalancing between like the I guess the ego consciousness and the self, and I guess the collective in some sense too. And that with the divine twins, it's like the divine twins kind of represent like Dionysus and Apollo also here, kind of like consciousness and unconsciousness, and these two different forces. Like Dionysus as a god of the unconscious, connected to the instincts also, and kind of like integrating and overcoming the instincts, because he was a very like animistic, shamanistic deity, and a lot of this kind of work, what was being done, is kind of connected to just dancing and integrating the instinct, the instinctual, and to really integrate that, to overcome that, where Apollo kind of is in that sense also connected to that, because the wolf is connected to him, like, so he's very like choreos connected as well. But there's these different aspects of it, and he really represents consciousness, where Dionysus represents unconsciousness and the connection to the instincts. And both of these sides kind of stem from like, we're there in the choreos, and both of these sides are important in it. It's like the both twins of the hero's journey that is in these like Gemini divine twin myths that are connected to the choreos. They work together, and then they overcome the parental complex, and then they bring this new youthful energy back into the society, so it doesn't become stale and dead. And and this coming back into society also links very well with like the earlier like King Arthur stuff we talked about, like me and Nairam a lot as well. It's because King Arthur, it's kind of like has this like choreos element in it, with like him pulling the sword from the stone, the sword representing both like logos and eros. It's like a phallic symbol, at the same time. And he does that, but then he also knows when to hand over the sword to the Lady of the Lake, and he has the round table, and the round table in of itself is kind of like a social integration tool. It's to really like discuss and really relate to people, and the relating part is the anima part, and it's the social aspect, and that's kind of like what helps to bring these different aspects in oneself together, and it's through this like kind of like dialogue that's going on that helps to facilitate that. Yeah, it's also kind of like what we're doing here with the Moment podcast too, and like with all these different talks, and that's kind of like I guess you could say like the journey that we're on, and like plus like figuring out all of these things. But I also do think though that with all of that said, it's like it's kind of also like in a way like a coming back to nature and our instincts, and to kind of like find this balance between consciousness and unconsciousness, and kind of like logos and eros, and these different parts of ourselves, and to find this like way back to like a balance with nature, and like animism and this like animistic lens really comes into that, and you can really see that within like well the Egypt stuff too. But before I want to like say a little bit about that as like a teaser for like the talk. I just want to like say a bit about a few things still. Here, for instance, you can see this image with, you know, the fish, salamander, but also like the rabbit and the human, for instance, and these different like phases of the embryo. You know, and Jung actually is the person who had said this. And the thing is that just as we kind of evolved from like this fish being, and slowly on you can see like how we're evolving more and more towards like this human that we are. At the same time, psychically we have these phases that we also go through. And we went through these, and we went from unconsciousness, and consciousness emerged from that, and we're moving towards that. But every individual in a way is kind of like doing that again, like how we also, from when we're kind of conceived, we become kind of all of these different things again, and then we become a human. We go through these different phases too. We have to deal with the parental complex, but then we have to, through social integration, deal with the inferiority superiority complex, and then we deal with these things, and then we find these like this balance, you know, and that's kind of the thing. It's like the logos and eros here, you know, like working together, and the thumos really being the anima, and the messenger of, well, the self, and that, in that sense, and the messenger of the soul, you could really call it, is this force that then brings these two sides together and brings them in harmony, brings nature and society in harmony, so we can work together, and that's really like, I guess in some sense, the animistic approach to the world too. It's like once we bring that together in us, then the world around us changes in a way, because, you know, well, the way we see it changes, and we're starting to understand and see things differently, and we, I guess, behave differently in that way too, because, you know, we're no longer have to fight this war, this inner conflict between like logos and eros, between consciousness and unconsciousness, and it has been like overcome, and peace has been found inside, and from that that then affects the outside world. It's like putting your room in order, but both, you know, like in as an outside but also inside manner, because those two things are through the field of being really related to each other, interconnected. So really what you're doing is like you're at the same time like putting your mind in order, and that's one big thing that's important with this here. to work on that and to go through this journey, so we can find that balance again of like, technology and nature. And in some sense, I guess you could call it between the grays, the with the logos, the I guess the reptilians with the eros, and the themos being the Pleiadians that are like in the middle, bridging the two. In some sense, you could call it, using that particular myth. Or these other figures like what Luke Skywalker did, but also like other such figures that bridge this like divide. I do think, like, with all of this said, like, the Egyptians really had a lot of these things figured out, like in their mythology and their stories, but also like how they really approached the world through this idea of like Ma'at, like the divine order, but also like truth at the same time. And there's a very like animistic, like like animism related like approach to that. You can see that in their deities too, and like how they approach things, but also really in general, like their approach, like how they did things, even with like the courts that they had locally. There's like an element of the round table in that already, in that idea that they had there. And with that said, like I really do think that Egypt is really like a very good example of really pointing out like how these things can come together and really like work well together and create something lasting, because it's the secret to why they lasted so long. These different things that they did. And yeah, I hope that with all of this said, it's like a good introduction, I guess, into this Egypt talk. And yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope I'll see you all again soon with the Egypt talk when that one comes out. And then that's then after the Egypt talk, I'll wrap up with the Moment podcast for season 1, and maybe there's gonna be a live stream or two or something like that, like less like I guess themed, but like for the themed stuff for now, like I think that's about it. And then in the new year we'll start with a new season. So yes, I would say bless you all, and stay balanced.